Good evening. Welcome to this edition of Northeast Diary. Here we bring you the latest developments from India's unexplored Northeast region. Today we are going to tell our listeners about a lovely agriculture-related festival in Manipur which is celebrated around this time of the year. We will also take you to Arunachal Pradesh, where the colorful Dri festival is celebrated by the Apatani tribe. This year, the historic Mizoram Peace Accord has completed 36 years. The Peace Accord, which was signed in 1986 between the Mizo National Front and the Union Government, has been termed as one of the most successful accords in India. The Mizoram Peace Accord not only ended 2 decades of insurgency but also paved the way for the former insurgents to form the government in Mizoram. The accord has paved the way for lasting peace in the state and brought in steady development and welfare of the people of the state. Our Aizawl correspondent tells us about the Peace Accord.
Every year, the day is declared as a public holiday to celebrate the historic occasion. The Mizo Peace Accord signed between the Mizo National Front and the Union Government on 30th June of 1986 had put an end to the insurgency that broke out in 1960. In the state, people celebrate the Peace Accord Day, locally known as Remnani, with full reverence as a symbol of God's blessings for everlasting peace. Every year, the day is declared as a public holiday to celebrate the historic occasion. The Mizo Peace Accord signed between the Mizo National Front and the Union Government on 30th June of 1986 had put an end to the insurgency that broke out in 1966. In the background of the rebellion, the root cause was the occurrence of widespread famine in 1959. The onset of famine was noticed through the flowering of bamboos, a phenomenon that augurs the advent of famine, and it resulted in a profusion of rats. The rodent population then ate up the bamboo seeds, turning towards crops and human habitation, bringing in full-blown plague. In that situation, the people had to pass a miserable life, had to sustain themselves on leaves and roots and face starvation deaths. Then, to help alleviate the hardships of the people during the famine, the Mizo National Famine Front was formed, taking up all kinds of human service, including correspondence with the then Assam government. Later, the MNF staged protests for long years against the apathy of the then Assam government towards the famine. MNF staged a major uprising in 1966, followed by 20 years of insurgent activities. After long years of the rebellion, MNF realized the futility of armed conflict and decided to go for a settlement. Renouncing violence, the movement returned to God and country. For Northeast Diary with Subhashis Tanda, Irene from Aizawl.
A young tea plucker of Dibrugarh, Assam has brought laurels for state by winning in the 11th South Asian Ashara Karate Championship held at Chalsa in West Bengal. Our Dibrugarh correspondent has filed this report.
Beating all odds, 20-year-old tea plucker Rajina Gwala of Maijan Tea Estate in Upper Assam's Dibrugarh district won heart of the people by clinching gold medal in the recently concluded 11th South Asian Ashihara Karate Championship held at Chalsa in West Bengal. 5 neighboring countries have participated in the event held at Chalsa in Jalpaiguri district of West Bengal from 24th to 26th June 2022. Rajina has proved that if one has dedication to achieve something, then he or she can achieve it. Rajina is a temporary worker at Maijan Tea Estate. She plucks tree leaves at Maijan Tea Estate with her womenfolk of the tea garden, but her passion and interest towards sports is incredible. Rajina has become famous among the tea garden workers in Maijan after she bagged the gold medal in the karate championship. From her childhood, she had an interest in sports. She used to watch the boys who played football in tea garden field, which somehow inspired her to take part in sports activity, and from then her sports career started, which resulted winning of gold medal in 11th South Asian Ashihara Karate Championship affiliated by International Ashiara Karate Group and approved by Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India. She gives credit to her coach Tapan Bhuiya, who has trained her all the skills of the game. For the last 7 years, she has been learning karate. Now, following her skills, many girls in the tea garden are inspired to practice karate. She thinks that every girl in tea garden should learn karate for self-defense. She appeals to the government to provide an ideal arrangement for their practice because they face trouble during the rainy seasons as their practice area becomes flooded. Tapan Bhuiya, the karate coach of Razina, feels proud for her achievement and urges the government to provide necessary support for her further achievement such that she can make her path for the Olympic Games in future. For Northeast Diary, this is Pranav Kumar Nath from Dibrugarh.
बर्फ से ढके पहाड़,
हवा के साथ झूमते चीड़ चिनार,
झीलों पर तैरते शिकारे,
हरी भरी घाटियों के दिलकश नजारे।
आकाशवाणी समाचार आपके लिए लेकर आया है जम्मू कश्मीर विशेष श्रृंखला एक नई सुबह।
हम बात करते हैं विकास की, निवेश की,
पर्यटन की, संस्कृति की
और रोज हो रहे बदलावों की। FM गोल्ड पर सुनिए हर शुक्रवार रात 9:15 पर आकाशवाणी समाचार की विशेष प्रस्तुति
जम्मू कश्मीर एक नई सुबह।
Northeast Diary program, broadcast every Thursday and Sunday at 5:30 p.m., brings very interesting and enchanting stories from the 8 Indian states of Northeast India. Don't forget to tune in.
Dree Festival is a popular festival in Arunachal Pradesh and it is an important agricultural festival of the Apatani tribe. This is the biggest festival celebrated by the Apatani tribe and it is marked by sacrificial offerings and prayers. This festival is celebrated on the 5th of July every year. A report.
The Apatanis, who inhabit a tranquil pine-clad valley called Jiro at the core of Lower Subansiri district of Arunachal Pradesh, are famous for the unique practice of wet rice cultivation. They are known for their sustainable agricultural practices and the agricultural cycles govern their everyday lives. Dree is celebrated in order to bring a bountiful harvest season. Hence, Apatani offers prayers to 4 gods they follow, that is, Tamu, Hanyang, Meti and Dani on the occasion. This 3-day-long agricultural festival is joyously celebrated with traditional clothes worn by men, women and children. It was in order to counter the menace of insects, pests and diseases and to alleviate the impending hunger and famine in the olden days that a series of rituals were observed in the month of Dree. The rituals during Dree are the Tamu, Meti, Madar and Mapin. The Tamu is propitiated to ward off the insects and pests. The Meti is propitiated to ward off epidemics and other ailments of human beings. The purification ritual of Madar is performed to cleanse the agricultural fields of unfavorable elements. This series of rituals is conducted with Mapin, which is performed to seek blessings of healthy crops and well-being of mankind. In the modern Dree, the Dani is also propitiated for fertility of soil, abundance of aquatic life in the rice fields, healthy cattle, and for prosperity of all human beings. On 4th of July, every evening, the Dree priest traditionally inaugurates the Dree festival at their respective villages. On the next day, that is on 5th of July, Dree is officially solemnized and celebrated at common ground with traditional gaiety after it is inaugurated by a chief guest unfurling the Dree flag followed by the Dree anthem. Everybody present are served with Dree Thakur, that is cucumber, Dree O, that is rice or millet beers, followed by community feast. To add color to the celebrations, the pre-dances, daminda and other folk dances are displayed. The modern dance and songs Literary competitions, games and sports competitions are other highlights of the day. During the Tabo period, women folk visits the home of their elderly relatives and present them with wine as a token of love and respect and to strengthen their relationships. For Northeast Diary, this is Rakesh Dole, Air News, Itanagar.
You are listening to our program Northeast Diary, bringing you enchanting stories from the northeastern part of India. This program is broadcast every Thursday and Sunday at 5:30 p.m. on FM Gold and on our app News on AIR. We look forward to you walking this journey with us twice a week, every week. Manipur is a state where different communities coexist and no month passes by without having a festival. The state's main occupation is agriculture as rice is cultivated in every part of the state. Now all the paddy fields have become green and most of the farmers are taking rest after laborious agricultural activities. In such times, the Buon Silthek is celebrated every year. Let's hear more from our Imphal correspondent JJ Thokchom.
In Chin Kukimijo dialect, bones means the mud and silthak is the word that translates to removing the mud, whereas the kut means festival. Therefore, Bon Silthak Kut is a festival organized after farmers prepare the paddy field and planted the paddy. It is the time when these farmers take a break and retire before they are engaged in caring for the paddy plant afterward till its harvesting. The 18th edition of Bon Silthak Kut 2022 was celebrated with fanfare at Bunglon Community Hall in Churachandpur district on Tuesday. The one-day festival was attended by village chiefs from neighboring villages. Even though the festival represented the Chin Kukimijo community, the Gangte tribe are the torch-bearer of organizing Bon Silthak Kut every year. Some of the features of the festival were presentation of cultural shows, dancing and singing, and having a grand feast in the place. Speaking to AIR Northeast Diary, Mr. Maminthang Gangte of Bunglon village, he said,
Bon in Gangte dialect means mud and Silthang means rinsing or removing. So, Bon Silthak Kut means mud rinsing festival. This is celebrated after 2 whole months of giving labor to these agricultural activities. This particular festival is marked by presentation of songs and cultural items. In a true sense, this is for all communities of Manipur.
The local MLA also took part in the festival and he assured possible support to the villagers, whether be it in farmer registration in different agricultural schemes, providing agri and horticulture seeds, machineries and fertilizer. He also applauded the farmers of the area for their well-known pineapple production in the state. JJ Thoksom, AIR News, Northeast Diary, Imphal.
In our Personality of the Week section today, we bring to you an interview with Vishu Rita Krocha. She is a journalist, writer and publisher from Nagaland. She is the author of A Bucket of Rain and co-author of Echoes of Spring, 4 Shades and The Chuck and Sangs, A Window to Fake District, to name a few, and the recent book titled From the Broken Earth.
This evening in our personality section, let me introduce you to one of the multi-talented women, a journalist, writer and an entrepreneur from Nagaland who has not only made a difference but also a source of inspiration to many. She is none other than Vishu Rita Krocha. Rita is known to many here in Nagaland as well as outside the state. Rita is a journalist by profession and has also ventured to a home-based publication house called the Pentrial Publication House, which was formally opened in November 2013. She is the author of A Bucket of Rain and a co-author of Echoes of Spring, 4 Shades to name a few, and of course the latest book title From the Broken. One of her poems from the Echoes of Spring is included in the Nagaland school education curriculum and is studied by the students of class 7. Welcome to our program, Rita.
Thank you, Asanya.
To begin with, can you kindly tell us something about yourself?
I am a journalist by profession. I joined journalism by writing a weekly column for the Eastern Mirror Daily while I was MS student. I joined Eastern Mirror, a Nagaland-based daily, in 2008 as a full-time correspondent. I worked there for about 5 years. In 2013, I quit full-time journalism to pursue my greater love for stories, which is publishing books, and ventured into a small home-based publication house called Pentrail Publication House.
What inspired you to join in the field of journalism? And according to you, if you see in the perspective of our state Nagaland, how is the scope of journalism?
While growing up, I didn't even know I wanted to become a writer because they never talked about writing as a profession. So in that sense, I was kind of lost and wasn't very sure what I wanted to pursue. But my love for the English subject was very clear. So that is how I took up English literature for my graduation course. It was then I also started writing my first poems during my second year of graduation, and subsequently that led me to pursue journalism for my master's degree. As for the scope, I think there is a lot of scope now. Today's generation are hungry for news, I would say. They want to stay updated, and even our social media, everywhere on the internet, they are looking for new updates and news. So I think there is a lot of scope for journalism in the state as well.
What motivated you to become a writer?
For me, journalism and creative writing are both rooted in my same love for pursuing stories. So journalism would be more like non-fiction, writing about stories that impact the society and impact lives as well. But creative writing would be something more of exploring stories which have not been written about before. There are so many stories which are yet to be unearthed. My love for stories also dates back to my childhood when I used to grow up listening to my grandparents narrate folktales to me, to us sitting around the traditional kitchen hearth. It probably stemmed from that time.
So who is your favorite poet or writer?
A very difficult question for writers to answer. There are multiple writers and poets that I look up to, and I think it would be unfair to list just a few.
So as a writer, you have been participating in so many literature fairs and so on in the state as well as in India and abroad. So what are your experiences?
I have been really fortunate in that sense to get opportunities to go abroad. My first foreign trip was the Nagaland Editors Tour to the United Kingdom, where the editors from different Nagaland newspapers and officials from the IPR department were part of. So I had just joined as a junior correspondent, and since my editor could not make it for the trip, I got the opportunity to be there. I think traveling really broadens your horizons and enables you to see life from a different perspective. It introduces you to new cultures and help you understand life better, I guess.
So coming back to your publication house, Pentrail, what motivated you to start publication house?
Like I mentioned earlier, it was really the lack of platform for writers that motivated me to start something like this. While growing up, we never heard of publishing houses in our own state which catered to publishing works from local writers. So when I ventured into publishing books, I had quit full-time journalism. I did with no savings at all, but a lot of dreams in my heart to start pursuing that.
Any financial assistance that you try to get it from the government to start this venture?
From the government, no. I've never really thought of approaching them because it was solely my dream, although of course it was to also accommodate young upcoming writers by way of publishing their works. But I've been blessed with a very generous and supportive family. So there were times when I didn't have enough money to print the next book title, but my family would always be there to help me support and, carry that out, for which I'll be always grateful to them.
Pentrail was started in the year 2013. So far, how many books have you published?
So in our last 8 years of existence, we have published 57 books.
Okay.
That includes 2 of my books.
Do tell us something about your works that has been published so far.
So my first experience with publication was Echoes of Spring. Just for the sheer love of it, I was writing poems and would contribute it to local papers here. And that's how I think the Northeast Zone Council Center took notice of our works, my sisters and mine, and they came forward with the proposal to publish our collaborative book. So they funded the book, and we were also very privileged to have the foreword written by one of world-renowned authors, Ruskin Bond. After having been introduced to the world of publishing, I started thinking about doing my own collection, and that's how A Bucket of Rain happened, and after which Yearnings and the latest being From the Broken Earth.
What are the genres of books that are published so far from your publication house?
Interestingly, they say that poetry does not have a market, which is also why a lot of mainstream publishers do not publish poetry anymore. But I think it was my own personal love for poetry that I started publishing poetry collections of other authors. So out of the 57 books that we have published so far, at least 50% would be poetry, I suppose. And we keep receiving a lot of poetry manuscripts. So I used to think and wonder myself also what could be the reason, but I think it's also because we come from very traditional background where our forefathers used to sing like for every occasion, you know, like when they go to fields or when they celebrated festivals. I think their expressions have always been very lyrical, and that's how I guess we also inherited some part of it. Apart from poetry, we have also published novels, short stories, fiction, non-fiction, as well as cookbooks, biographies.
Coming to your first book, Echoes of Spring, that you have co-authored with your sister, tell us something more about it.
I had not really started with a theme in mind to bring it out as a collection. I'm sure my sister also did the same thing. We were just writing randomly, but after it became a collection, I also realized that it had a lot of seasons-inspired poems. It's divided into 4 sections, seasons, mostly based on seasons.
So your latest book, From the Broken Earth, what is it all about?
It's a collection of the last 2 years of COVID, and all the poems in the book are inspired and written during these 2 years of the pandemic. My latest collection, From the Broken Earth, I think I'll read from the introduction of the book and give you a glimpse of it. In a world before coronavirus, I would never have imagined grieving the loss of a loved one from so far away. Mother said, in these unprecedented times, it is the saddest thing that you can be there for those you love, especially and if most unfortunately it happens to be their final moments. But through the darkest days of the pandemic, I sought simple pleasures in the most ordinary yet beautiful things. A new dawn, the setting of the sun, the joys of companionship, the coming of spring, the blooming flowers, the rainy days, the smell of the earth, fields, hills and blue skies, the colors of autumn, my love for November, all of these gave me a ray of hope. Most of all, I marveled at the resilient spirit of human beings, even when I read with horror stories of people who have gone through the most terrifying experiences. We have persevered and survived one of the most devastating years in human history. It's not over yet, but I still carry that hope that we will make it through together. Written with much hope in my heart that one of these poems will resonate with you. May you, the one holding this book in your hands, find the light you are searching for.
In today's generation, how do you see our people faring as far as writing of books are concerned?
While I was growing up, we barely had books written by our local authors, by Naga writers. The books that we read were mostly written by outsiders. But coming to the present generation, I think also because now that there is a platform for them to get published, I see a lot of not just writers but also readers, which is really important to keep the book business going. And today, children as young as 7, 10 are writing books. We have also published a 7-year-old girl who wrote stories, her own adventures, and illustrated herself, and also published a 10-year-old girl who was actually the youngest published author from Nagaland.
I'm sure you have faced challenges, and if so, how did you overcome it?
If you are doing something that you love, regardless of the challenges, you will be able to sail through. While I was pursuing full-time journalism, it's like really demanding. Sometimes you have to go outstation reporting and come back and file your stories even late at night. There are no set times for your meals, but I think at the end of the day, it's the fulfillment of doing something that you love that really matters. And as for publishing books, like, it was a challenge for me in the sense I started with zero knowledge about business, and so I had to learn everything from scratch, and by doing it myself, we've made errors along the way. But I think with every new book, we keep learning every day, and I think that's the best part of it, and especially being able to see that smile on a first-time author's face, like when they first see their own book being published.
So can we expect some more writings coming up in future or publication that we can expect?
I've not really been writing, but only been reading manuscripts. So I think I'll be doing more of publishing other young aspiring authors, and hopefully mine will take maybe a year or so.
So what are your future plans?
The only future plan I have is to keep publishing books and keep writing stories.
Before we wind up, dear listeners, let's listen to one of Rita's poems.
I wrote this poem during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Noticed that a lot of young people returned home and also went back to their own villages and started farming. So this poem is about that. So it goes like this. The earth waited, longing for the touch of hands that served in faraway places, in cities that don't recognize their names, nor the sweat of their brows on a scorching summer day. And for years and years, nothing had grown in these fertile lands. They just waited under the open skies, feeling the rain, the sun, the wind, but not the love of the hands that had long grown rich crops. But one day, the world started falling apart, and all they could do was return where they belong. The future was uncertain, but the fields were happy. The farmers have come back home.
So lastly, your message to our listeners.
The only message that I would like to leave our listeners with is to follow your passion. If you keep following your passion, everything else will fall into place.
Thank you, Rita. You have been an inspiration to many like me, and especially to young people of our state, and we wish you the best in future and keep inspiring through your writings.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And now, let's listen to this beautiful song from the lovely state of Sikkim. With that, we have come to the end of this edition of Northeast Diary. Do join us next week to hear more stories from this enchanting part of India. Bye-bye. This program was presented by Vinita Thakur, scripted by Suparna Saikia, produced by Sharmila Goswami and assisted by Kamlesh Mudgal. It was brought to you by the News Services Division of All India Radio.